But this is a common answer that I give to people who ask me why do all cars look the same. Well, it's because they're built to the same set of rules, regulations, dogmas, and hard points. You know, that the sort of the entry curve is one of them.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Off the Record. We love Off the Record, and I know that you guys love Off the Record. You tell me all the time when Off the Record saves you money. The way it works is it's very simple. If you get a ticket, a moving violation of any kind, from the small to the very big, you call Off the Record. Well, you don't actually call. You go to offtherecord.com/TST or download the Off the Record app and use code TST10. Then Off the Record will set you up with a qualified attorney in the jurisdiction where you got that ticket. They will fight that ticket on your behalf. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to do anything besides scan or send a photo of that ticket and pay a very modest fee for their services. And our discount code TST10 on the Off the Record app or offtherecord.com/TST on the web will get you 10% off all legal services, not just this time, but every time. That way, Off the Record can fight that ticket on your behalf. Make sure those points stay off the record, because it's never just about the fine of the ticket, right? A lot of people go, well, I'll just plead guilty, get it over with, pay the fine. But it's not just that fine. There's the court costs, but more importantly, there's the insurance costs. It's just a problem. It can follow you around for years. It's a whole economic system based on squeezing money out of you, and you don't want to be a part of it. Exit that system with Off the Record. So go to offtherecord.com/TST or download the Off the Record app and use code TST10. It is brilliant. Alrighty, folks, we got a special show for you today. Sasha Selipanov is in the studio. This dude is a heavy hitter. He is an independent automotive designer, but he has worked for some of the greats, designing one of the greatest supercars of all time, the Bugatti Chiron. He's also designed the Koenigsegg CC8 50th anniversary. We saw at the Quail last year. He designed the Koenigsegg Gemera, the very first four-seat hypercar, the Bugatti Vision GT, the 2015 Atlantic. He designed the Lamborghini Huracan. He's designed for Genesis. I mean, this is a heavy hitter designing resume. Such a treat to have him in studio talking about how to design a hypercar. It's Sasha Selipanov on the Smoking Tire Podcast. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for coming by.
It's awesome to be here.
Yeah. I think it was, was it Castriota who said that I have to talk to you?
I think it was my friend Alan Macy. At least he was the one who reached out to me.
Oh, yeah. But it was either the Oil Stain Lab guys or Castriota.
It could be either.
It could have been either of them.
Jason, I know the Oil Stand Lab guys.
Yeah,
quite well
I think
too,
it was Jason who was like, you have to talk to Sasha because you're a fucking heavy hitter.
Heavy hitter.
Where did you fucking come from?
Gained a lot of weight.
No. Like, have you ever designed a normal car, or have you only ever designed like $1 million plus cars?
No, I mean, obviously, it's not easy to get into those projects. So to earn your rite of passage, you have to do quite a lot of regular car work. And my first, I would say, 6-7 years working for VW Group was primarily on regular car projects. We did everything from, you name it, the next Jetta to the, Touaregs and Golfs and
were you doing whole car or little sections like lights and door handles and stuff, or what?
No. Each designer has a chance to propose their complete vision for the exterior, and then if you get picked, then you end up doing a full-size model with a few clay modelers helping out. And this was my early days, sort of learning how to make a nice-looking car, picking up skills and experiences from those clay guys around.
Did you go to Art Center?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What year did you graduate Art Center?
2005.
Okay. Oh, so you're a year younger than me. Okay, cool. So it's been a minute. You've been in the world for a while. Did you go direct from Art Center to VW, to car industry? Yeah,
so graduating Art Center, I had a few offers, but VW, they helped me with my degree project, and I was quite close with a few people there.
What was the degree project?
Oh, it was a Dino Competizione Ferrari. So that was also quite weird because they helped me a lot. And
Volkswagen was helping you with that? How does that work?
Well, it wasn't official, let's just say. It was just there was a head of design at VW here in California, Simi Valley Studio back then was Derek Jenkins.
Oh, yeah. I know Derek.
Derek's a good friend.
Yeah.
He mentored me through my final semesters in school. And then,
cool.
He said, look, we want to support you, but it's a Ferrari, it's not a Volkswagen, so we can't do it officially. But maybe you can use our 3D printers in the evening when nobody's watching. And then the painter at the studio, Bob, he was just an amazing help. He picked up all these parts and said, you're going to ruin them with your in-laws and your wife sending the parts in the studio. This is not going to go well. So just bring them to the office, and I'll spend a weekend slaving away. And then Honda guys pitched in as well. They did 3D printing of the interior. So it was kind of like an incredibly expensive, ambitious project that I ended up just scavenging off of people in a I mean, I designed it
and it's
I
like
modeled
a 1/8 or 1/6 scale model or something like that?
It was a quarter scale.
So it's pretty big.
Pretty big.
Yeah.
Wow. Is
That's
that
cool.
common for a final project? Is that the requirement, or did you get ambitious?
So the back then the requirement was a 5th scale clay, but the design theme that I had in mind was all like fragile, thin surfaces, so I couldn't execute them in clay. Plus, I was always very passionate about doing things on the computer. Just my two passions were cars and kind of computers as a kid. So I just always wanted to do things digitally.
Yeah.
And then when I came up with the design and I showed it to Derek and to a few of my instructors at the time, they said, there's no way you're going to pull this off in clay, so might as well just do something else.
Yeah.
But instead, then we figured if we 3D printed the whole thing, it could, yeah.
Did you like clay?
No, I'm pathetic with my hands. Like, it's just the lowest, it's disgusting, the stuff that I can produce with my two hands.
But that clay is an interesting
favorite,
art, though, isn't it?
For sure.
The guys are they still...
They are magicians, yeah.
Are they still doing it by hand, or is there now some kind of like 3D printer, 3D mill machine that does that, the clays?
I'm very biased, so that's a very sensitive topic. It's a hidden nerve.
Okay. No, but I mean, like, out there in the world.
A lot of people in the industry are still relying a lot on clay. There's plenty of car companies that are still very much clay-based, design studios that execute things only in clay, and then some believe that the magic touch and the human touch is only possible when you have a artisan clay modeler putting their heart and soul
Italian.
into it. Well, it is true
like
to a point.
Italy, yeah.
It is true to a point because these guys, they're real sculptors, they're talents. But then as a designer, you're not the one executing your own car. There's this other person who puts their talent into it. And a lot of it is you explaining to them what it is that you wanted to do and them misunderstanding it and channeling it through their own understanding of what beautiful cars are like. And it could be incredibly rewarding because they bring a perspective to the table that you didn't have. But it could also be incredibly frustrating because let's say the guy has a passion for E-types, and I always thought E-type was pathetic looking. So I don't want my volumes over body like an E-type. I would much rather be closer to a 250 short wheelbase than an E-type, and we're having all these philosophical arguments.
You could have a final design and hand it to the clay person, the clay modeler, and they could change it drastically. Like I always thought they take your direction from them and they go, okay, that's exactly what I'm making. This is the scale I'm making. These are the proportions I'll make, and then they just execute.
It varies. It varies. So as a designer in a conventional, traditional car studio, you produce drawings, right? So you produce two-dimensional
right.
output, and you hang it on the wall. Your bosses come and they say, well, this looks great. Why don't you try this idea on a full-size model? And then you're speaking to that clay modeler and you're saying, look, like, we should do it this way, we should do it that way. You can even do sections. You can bring them sections and say, I want the door section to be exactly like this. But then when they start sculpting, they always deviate from what you did. Plus, they have to, because your two-dimensional sort of output was never going to come together perfectly into a 3D model. There's always areas where you thought your door section was going to be such and your fender section was going to be this other thing, and then they don't come together. There's no nice surface that transitions between your door that you imagined and your fender section that you thought of. So then the clay modeler is the guy who actually ends up doing all the fun bits of the job, to me, because the actual sculpting is the fun.
But if you're designing on a computer, you now have a 3D version of it.
Right.
So do you then bypass the clay process entirely?
Entirely.
Okay.
I learned everything I know how to do from those guys. I give them all sorts of credit for the enlightenment that I got from them. But now I'm doing it on my own, on the computer, and I'm using other designers who are also doing it on the computer in 3D. and we use 3D modelers, computer modelers, who are exchanging data with us, and it's basically a process where everybody speaks the same language.
Right.
Instead of you humming a melody and somebody else trying to put that melody into score, you are the one writing the score.
Yeah.
It just cuts out the humming part.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you're submitting a whole car design and competing against other people on the team, how many people are you competing against typically? 10, 50?
It very much depends on the project and the size of the company. I mean, at Koenigsegg, when I was head of design and in charge of the team, it was a very small team. We were like
the whole company is like 100 people, isn't it?
Well, no, it's more now. The company has grown to 600 now, I guess. But we were a team of seven to 10 people with a couple of contractors helping us out here and there, 10 people. But VW design, let's say the next Golf, it would be a pretty standard practice to see 40 people competing, and then 10 full-size models, and each full-size model has A side and B side, and one person on the A side is responsible, and then the other one is on the B side. So then you have 10 full-size models, 20
A side and
designers.
B side, what is that?
Driver side, passenger side.
Oh.
You can try different things this way.
Yeah.
Right.
You can try a different door idea, or you can try a different window graphic.
They're asymmetrical, the models, right.
And it'll do it with one model, right? So on one side of the car, it's one thing, and you walk around the front, and it changes.
Usually they would keep the front and the rear as symmetrical as possible, so the car doesn't look like a Frankenstein, but yeah.
Ironic could be when you say it's for a Golf, because like the Golf doesn't change that much, generation to generation.
Exactly.
Whereas a new like Koenigsegg or something could be like wild and off the
You have a
wall.
difficult time telling the designs apart. I mean, there's 10 of them in front of you. It's outdoors. There's a big design review, and you're wondering, which one's mine?
Yours is the one that looks like a Dino, apparently.
Yeah, that Dino concept was probably interesting. Did you ever get to share it with someone like Glickenhaus, who was like obsessed with those Competizione Dinos and did his Ferrari P45 with the bubble top and all that stuff? Jason did that car.
Right. I mean, so Glickenhaus and I didn't really cross paths in any meaningful way. We only were once on an airplane together, flying to New York from somewhere in Europe, I think Geneva or something. So no, I didn't cross paths with him, but I did, of course, see the work Jason did at Pininfarina for Glickenhaus. I think the P45 still remains kind of one of my favorite
beautiful cars
from that era.
Yeah,
a lot of the Ferraris went into a, how do I put it, overstyled direction, and that thing just speaks back to all the real, true kind of beauty.
Jim and I are from the same town in New York, and I would see him driving that thing around.
That's
and
cool.
When you see that car, not on a concourse or on a show stand, but like, surrounded by Volkswagen Golfs and regular cars, it's like from a different planet.
I'm sure.
Basically, yeah. Crazy car.
Yeah.
That was. I have. Did you see in my office?
You can type in my Dino if you want. Just type in Dino into search and Selipanov, my last name.
I want to see that thing.
Yeah, Dino.
There's a little delay. S-E...
like that.
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh.
The yellow thing.
Fun.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So that was 05.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that.
So you see these floating surfaces that could be made out of clay.
It's like wearing a hat. A little bit.
Yeah, but I really wanted the bubble top, so I kind of exaggerated it.
Yeah. That would not have worked in clay.
No.
Whoever told you that was definitely right. That wouldn't have worked in clay. It looks really cool, though. It's got like some Ferrari vibes, but also some like Myers-Manx kind of vibes a little bit.
That was actually Derek's influence, because I spent the internship in California studio here, and it was all about buggies, so I got this like...
Of course, Derek has one of the coolest Manx buggies around. Yeah. His thing is dope. That's cool. It's got, and I see like maybe a little like J. Mays love in there too.
Sure. Plenty.
Yeah.
Freeman Thomas, J. Mays, all those guys are kind of my heroes. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Okay, so what was the first design that you did that was actually picked for Volkswagen? Did you have one that was picked?
There was a Jetta that was picked, and then that thing, oh my God. That just didn't work. I mean, that thing looked pretty bad, and I struggled to make it look good because I was too young and inexperienced and stubborn, which was a good thing, but in a bad way.
Did that become a production Jetta at some point?
I was taken off the project ultimately.
Oh.
There was a big management change, and I was told that I should vacate the seat, which was a blessing in disguise. In hindsight now. Yeah.
And so but you stayed at Bugatti, or stayed at Volkswagen Group.
I stayed
right?
at Volkswagen Group. I felt like there was a lot to learn at VW. And there was people around me, like my direct boss was at that time Thomas Ingenlath, who is now CEO of Polestar.
Oh, cool.
And I was working directly under him. The guy has a great sort of design taste and just a very inspirational design leader. So I was happy to stay, even though I was taken off the Jetta. And there was always also a promise of all these exciting brands, Lamborghini coming in, doing a project with our design team or Bugatti. And those projects popped up every once in a while. And I remember that there was a moment when Lambo came for what became the Huracan. And they came to our design team in Germany and they said, we need interior design proposals. And I was an exterior designer, so I begged my bosses to allow me back then to do an exterior. And they were, no, the guys are only interested in interior. I said, but I really want to do an exterior. So I just built up my own exterior and I asked them to put it into the presentation folder. They did. And head of design at the time was Walter De Silva. And he started looking at the presentation folder from the wrong side, from what I remember. So he just opened
He opened the last one
and
first.
he saw the exterior and he was like, oh, that's so cool. We should just do that. So then all of a sudden we had an exterior project in the team.
Wow.
So then all the designers were invited to participate,
cool.
although I kind of opened the door with mine, but then everybody jumped in on the project.
Yeah.
But
Huracan's a great looking car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clean, but aggressive, and it works.
So actually I was sent to Italy at the end of that project for a year and a half to finish that exterior together with the Italian team. So that was my first big kind of production exterior.
Did you enjoy that?
Oh, very much. It was crazy. I remember, like, one of my most vivid memories from that time is I'm obsessed with Italian cars. I mean, for me, that is really the holy grail, the religion. So I'm sitting there in Sant'Agata, and I would buy like a carton of red wine and a bowl of mozzarella, and I would just sit there drinking on the curb, drinking the wine and just eating mozzarella and just like touching the ground, like I'm on holy ground here. I love it. This is crazy. Yeah. So I was just jittering the whole time.
Yeah, that's cool. Were they fun to work with, or did they like? I mean, obviously they have pride in their work, but was it a different like corporate environment from Volkswagen?
I think that when I first arrived, there was, I wouldn't say, there was an adjustment period for both sides because, first of all, they didn't understand why I should be there because De Silva sent me there, and I don't think they wanted my help necessarily to get the car into production, so they were a bit hesitant. But then, like 2-3 weeks into it, I was just fully integrated. I was part of the team. Every dinner we were going out together. It was plenty of inside jokes, and it just became kind of like a family at the end. So I really enjoyed it. A very different corporate environment from Germany, very emotional, lots of theater, lots of drama, lots of tantrums and
15 espressos a day.
Oh, everyone's agitated to the point of it's good stuff, yeah.
And did you get like any seat time in the prototypes or anything like that? Like once they became drivable cars, were you then okay? Your job is done now, or could you stay involved at that point?
So without going into too much detail, but there was an unfortunate accident with one of the younger guys in the company driving a prototype or a production car as well. So when I was there, they were just reeling off of that accident and saying we're not going to let any of the especially young stupid employees drive our cars anymore. So I never got a chance to drive when I was there, but they did drive me around. And maybe that was even a better thing because back then, I had very little experience driving powerful cars, and I would just tiptoe around. So somebody else driving and who knows what they're doing is always a good way to understand the type of product you're actually working on. Yeah. And shortly after that, I was back in Germany, and the Chiron project was starting up, and that was my first experience driving a fast car, the Veyron. There was one of the chief engineers brought the car over and said, we're going for a drive. He drove. He hit like 350 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn. Yeah. And then we switched sides. I drove, and then he said, don't drive like you're my grandma. And then, I drove like I wasn't his grandma anymore. Right? And, wow. That was crazy.
Quite an introduction.
So you go from like a Golf GTI company car to a Bugatti Veyron. Yeah. And that's a pretty big jump. I've never driven anything faster than a GTI prior to that.
That is a big jump. Yeah. Did you, when you were, once Huracan was done, was it, how true was it to your original design, or did it have to be drastically compromised?
There were some things about it that were still true to the original design. The general cleanness of the car. I think there was a lot of push from design, from the marketing side, and from some of the clients to make extreme design. But I really felt that
Lamborghini, no.
Well, but if you look at the LP400 Countach,
Sure.
the original. I still think that the best Lambos are the ones that were striking from proportions point of view and striking from kind of the overall shape, but not overloaded with complicated bolt-on details.
Yeah.
So the fact that the original Huracan is maybe cleaner than the Aventador is something that I personally really fought for. But the result of the work is total teamwork.
The Mercies have really aged well in that way.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
I really like those cars. Yeah, Murcielago is great.
Yeah, they're. It's funny because like the Lambo, like the cars get better to drive after the facelift. Like they always kind of figure something out in the facelift. We just did a video like about the facelifted Cayenne Turbo GT, and I was talking about, I use Lambo as a very specific example of like they never quite finish the dynamics until the facelift, but the pre-facelift cars are always really, really clean, which is nice.
Well, is that still the case though?
Well, the newest one I haven't seen in person. Revuelto, I haven't seen in person. I've only seen pictures, so I would say maybe not there. But 02 Mercy compared to an SV, yes.
Yes.
For sure.
So that's my feeling as well. I think every new generation car should start as the cleanest possible statement, and then you sort of do all the RSs and all the Rs and follow that.
I once talked to Ian Callum for a bit over a bottle of wine at Pebble Beach, and he said that I asked him if he ever owned any of the cars he designed, and he said no, because he was unhappy with the change in purity from his design to the production cars, even though there's objectively nothing wrong with the production cars. He just couldn't love them in the same way. Did you feel that way about the stuff that you've designed? Or, I mean, most of what you've designed is far out of reach for regular people to just go out and buy, but you could probably afford a Huracan if you wanted one.
Well, a Huracan perhaps, but definitely not anything on the scale of a Chiron or a Koenigseggs that I worked on. So I realized quite early on that the role of a designer in a conventional process in car companies is very limiting. You are there almost like creating a candy wrapper for the technical bits and pieces that are in the car. And a lot of the big OEMs are, let's say, there's so much at stake. There's logistics, there's purchasing, there's the parts components bins that they already have developed, and you can't just come in and say, you know what, for this amazing design to work, we're gonna have to start from scratch. They can't. There's a lot of stuff already there. But even with the stuff that's already there, if you were allowed to shuffle bits around, if you were allowed to say, well, these control electronic boxes, let's just rotate them around, let's stack them differently, let's relocate them from here to there, you could get the shape of the car far better optimized, as opposed to just working with whatever's handed to you.
Yeah.
And so I tried to understand more about packaging, and there was a few people that I met in my career that kind of were inspirational in this way. A couple at Bugatti, but especially at Koenigsegg. I mean, the Christian experience, just learning from that guy. It transcends what you think a role of a designer is, to a point where you are becoming more like a car architect. And at that point in time, if the final product looks not like what you imagined, you should really just blame yourself. Because if you were allowed to change stuff around on the packaging side, if you were allowed to reshuffle bits and pieces to the way you want them to be reshuffled, and you still don't achieve a good-looking car with good stance and good proportions, then I'm not saying I want to own cars that I designed, but there's a point at which you were given so much freedom that if it still doesn't look good, you might as well look for another kind of job.
Right.
Yeah. And is it because of someone like Christian, who is an out-of-the-box kind of guy? Is it because of the size of Koenigsegg? Is it the fact that the cars are so expensive and boutique-y anyway that that contributes to the out-of-the-box thing, or is it kind of all of the above?
I think you nailed it. It's all of the above. Christian is very unique. That has to be said. He's very, very unique because he never takes what is there as a dogma. Like, this is how it is. This is how it was. This is how it shall be forever.
He builds cars like as if no one has ever built a car.
Every single time.
And every piece of it, the technology. He's like, how can we do this differently or better?
I drove in a Gemera once.
This sounds great. This sounds easy. This sounds logical. This sounds like we can actually do this, and we will not be doing this. We will be doing this other thing that is going to kill us, but we're going to succeed anyway.
Yeah,
that's his way.
The synthetic manual transmission is real crazy. I mean, I've not spent a lot of time driving those, or just a couple. And you drive one for 5 seconds, and you go, "Well, this is different. This isn't like anything else." I mean, it's.
But from the point of view of cabin ergo, like when you get into the cabin and you see this visor windshield that is just completely encapsulating your world view, and you have this almost 360 wide view because the A-pillars are so far back. There's just every other
why
car.
do A-pillars exist? Mm-hmm. We don't need them, obviously.
There is some safety attached to them.
Sure, of course there is.
Why can't we all, move them all back?
No, because it makes getting in and out of the car slightly trickier.
I'm sure.
So let's say the rule book says there's a few points on the sort of it's called the cantrail curve, so A-pillar going into the roof. There are a few hard points there that you're not allowed to violate because that's where ingress and egress takes place. But Christian's kind of out-of-the-box thinking says, well, I just want this windshield because it looks awesome when you're inside the car, and we'll learn a new way of getting in and out of it. It's not any difficult. It's not any more difficult. It's just not conventional way of kind of rolling your head into the cabin, and hence he has this new...
And for that type of experience, like, look, it's okay if it's a little harder to get into the car. Like,
there are plenty of cars
it's not for everybody.
that are hard to get in and have probably adhered to the traditional hardpoint thing. I mean, it's even with those rules.
Yeah,
we've driven plenty of cars where you go, oh, you got to kind of rotate this way, or you got to duck your head a little bit more, Viper, stuff like that. So,
but this is a common answer that I give to people who ask me why do all cars look the same. Well, it's because they're built to the same set of rules, regulations, dogmas, and hardpoints. That the sort of the entry curve is one of them.
Folks, got to take a quick break for NASCAR. Their 75th anniversary season is really starting to heat up. We've already seen tempers flare on a couple of occasions, with Bowman and Suarez exchanging words at COTA, and most recently, Ross Chastain introducing Noah Gragson to his right hand at Kansas. Emotions are high, and the field is certainly beginning to feel the pressure of locking in their playoff spot before it's too late. Now, this weekend, the NASCAR Cup Series is headed to Charlotte Motor Speedway for one of their biggest events of the year, the Coca-Cola 600. Wrapping up the 2023 NASCAR Salutes window, this weekend is about so much more than just a race. The entire racing community rallies around this event to show respect and gratitude to the brave men and women who protect the United States. There's just a grandness to this race, unlike any other race on the schedule. If you don't have Memorial Day weekend plans yet, you've got to check out NASCAR. Invite the whole crew over and watch NASCAR honor those who have fought and continue to fight for our freedoms by tuning in to the Coca-Cola 600 on Sunday, May 28th at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific on Fox. What was the process like of submitting designs for Chiron? Was it similar to when you did it for a Jetta, or is it more like the Koenigsegg side?
No, it was a big project. I think VW Group, there was so many designers who wanted to be a part of that one. So we had I don't know 13 quarter scale models, one of which was mine as a selection process, and you had to kind of win from that.
I mean, where now it's 10 years later, or however many years it's been since Chiron came. 5 years later, whatever. 6. How long has Chiron been?
It was out 16.
Okay, so 8 years later. Did you, when you were doing your designs, did you see what other people were doing, and ever look at another person's design and go, oh shit, you know what? I mean, I want to win this, but actually this person's design is pretty amazing.
There was a lot of impressive stuff in that selection, in the original pool of ideas, and not all of the guys who worked on the project were sitting together with me in the same studio. There was, designers involved from other design centers of the group, so I couldn't see all of their designs. And in the end, it all comes together in the final presentation, and then you sort of realize where you rank in that food chain. So I think I had a pretty strong concept in mind, and I was happy to execute on that concept. Just to
Pull up that drawing again, Zach. So they I imagine they told you like, okay, this is going to be the same basic architecture as Veyron, so the packaging is similar if not exact, right?
No, I think in the beginning of the project, things were a bit more free. I mean, it was clear that we would have the W16 engine and W16 engine with four-wheel drive with gearbox pointing forward. This sets up a cabin in many ways, so you're not sitting in a LaFerrari type cabin where you're shoulder on shoulder.
Where the seats are very close together, right?
You have the transmission between you, so that means there's a considerable tunnel in place. And if you think about all these technical ingredients, that sets up a car also aesthetically, because then you're not working with, let's say, a car that lives off of its Group C like tiny little bubble cabin and massive fender forms, but it's more of a squat bulldog proportion, where you're kind of low but also wide and stancy. So there is some stuff from the beginning that you have to tackle just because of the architecture of the car, but the initial phases are quite free. I mean, we could even change things like the window barrel and move stuff around quite a bit.
And was this your first round of drawings that we have up?
This was the very first, very first.
It's amazing to see how much of it actually survived. I mean, the whole front bumper and front nose is pretty close to what the car looks like, and the sort of butterfly, or what do you call it, the rear really made it to the end product too, didn't it?
The rear is what made it really, and the idea of these very kind of muscly, full air-blown surfaces. I thought of I think I had an image of a parachute at the time in mind, of just something that is tensed by the wind, and that was the kind of form development that we tried to put into it.
Ironically, the side intakes behind the doors are much more like what you would see in a Ferrari 296 than what you ended up seeing in the Chiron, which is that big C-shaped form.
So the big C-shaped form,
which is fucking cool, by the way. I love it. The C-shaped form is awesome.
We called it the Bugatti line, Bugatti signature line. It was always in the mix, and we always knew we would probably go that way, but we wanted to explore every other eventual possibility before we went that way. So in the first round of design proposals, the chief designers actually asked for us not to put that line on the car.
Okay.
We were told to search for what else can be done, and then knowing that we will probably end up doing this.
I mean, it works. Yeah,
I think the car's stunning.
I think that C works a lot.
And the C carries over to the interior because, of course, but the interior is amazing.
It was a really good collaboration. I have to mention there's obviously more people than just myself in the project. Etienne Salome was amazing on the interior. Frank Heil was together with me on the exterior in the production phase, developing the car, and Achim Anscheit was our boss.
It's remarkably kind of uncompromised, but it's also sort of unfussy considering how fast it goes and how much like air it needs to suck in and all that kinds of stuff. It's
interesting you mentioned that, because it really just feels like it is sucking in air when you drive that car. It's inhaling just everywhere. You feel this sense of devouring the air.
It looks angry and like it's just eating the air in front of it.
So when in the later versions, like the Pure Sport and stuff with the big fixed wing, are you not about that design so much? I mean,
I have plenty of respect for what the guys did after, but I left already. I wasn't part of the company anymore. When the Chiron came out, I really felt like that was it for me. It was also a crazy part of my life because I drove from Berlin to Wolfsburg every day, which is about 460 kilometers. So that's
every day
in the car, there and back. And there are no speed limits, but you still are fighting.
That's still a long drive every day.
So I'm doing like 250 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn, fighting my way through.
In a GTI?
In a GTI, yeah. And then
it's a well-used GTI.
Those GTIs were swapped every 6 months. And they would always sort of be...
Dealer demo. always cared for. Because that's sold under the executive demo label.
So I think I promised my wife, but also... my team members that when the project is done, it's not sustainable. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Could you move closer to there?
So the Wolfsburg is in the middle of nowhere. I don't think anybody would voluntarily move from Berlin to Wolfsburg. And my kids in school and my wife working, and then we built a little house, bought a plot of land just outside the center, and it wasn't on the card for us to move. Plus, I just felt like, honestly, like my mission is done. Like that thing really took a toll, and I was just happy to have it done. Yeah.
That, or you just need a faster company car. I mean, honestly, we need.
That's a long. That's far. That is a big commute.
That's really
Berlin
far.
Is an amazing city. You don't want to move away from there. It looks stunning.
Thanks.
Great. You and the team, amazing job.
Thank you very much.
Can we talk about Gemera?
Yeah.
I can't fucking Christian. Make your cars pronounceable.
There's a Swedish way of saying
CCX was just easier. Come on. Like, now they've all got funky ass names.
Yeah.
First 4-seat hypercar.
Right.
Talk to me about what Christian said he wanted and how you kind of interpreted his instructions into this design.
So yeah, that was a really incredible project. There's a little short preamble / anecdote that I think makes sense, and I should tell. Around 2008, I went to visit Christian for an interview. Early 2019. And when I saw the technical drawing of the Gemera, what would become the Gemera, I had this weird deja vu moment, a bit like what I had earlier in your studio, where I felt this has happened before. It's weird, but it was a lasting effect. I was sitting there looking at the technical drawing and feeling like I've seen this before. Like this is happening twice. So I went back home. I dug through my hard drives, and I found the 2008 technical drawing of a 4-seat Koenigsegg with Koenigsegg logos and everything on it, and it was just a technical drawing that I had done in 2008. So before I resaved the file or anything, I screenshotted the file so he could see that the saved date is 2008. Sent it to Christian, said, Christian, check this out. I think this is what you just showed me in the company, and I found something on my hard drive that looks ridiculously the same. It was mid-engine, it was 4-wheel drive, there was a prop shaft going forward, there was 4 seats, it was low-slung, mid-engine, 4-seat Koenigsegg.
Sorry, had you just drawn this for fun or as an idea?
As an idea. Back then, I just drew it as an idea.
And you never sent it to them?
Never sent it to them, nothing.
Holy whoa.
And then he replies saying, that's around the same time when I first had the idea. I'm like, you must have been, somehow radiating brain waves, and I tuned into the radio station because, I don't know, I don't normally draw technical package drawings in my spare time, but I did that one time. So then it was like, yeah, you know what, you should just come and help us with the project, and it would be great to have you on board for this. And I was thrilled. We moved, my family and I, my wife and I, kids, moved from Germany to Sweden and started working at Koenigsegg. And so they did design work on the project, but Christian was not happy with where things were headed on the design of the car, so I was given pretty much a clean slate. And at the time also, the team wasn't fully in place. We had a couple of guys in the studio, but the heavy hitters that I was planning on bringing on board weren't there yet. So it was just this technical drawing, a design that Christian wasn't very happy with, and I wasn't very happy with it either. And the ambition to get the car to Geneva, and that's just a few months away from my start date. So just had to sit down, and this is kind of going back to the point of you should be modeling your own cars. So that I really sat down and started modeling like there was no tomorrow, just staying up nights and weekends, and connected a good friend of mine as a freelancer to the project as well. So he was staying up nights and weekends and helping me, two of us basically get this thing. And slowly, as the time went on, the team came on board, and already the final weeks of the project were a little bit less crazy, but the kickoff phase, when this kind of monstrous ambitioned project lands on my desk with kind of a delivery date for Geneva and not much to kind of hold on to, basically. Technical base was all there, but the design we had to do in the few short weeks.
Wow.
So it's a very cool design, and it's, you know, as far as I can tell, the only 4-seat car that's ever been designed with 2 doors and not 4. As far as like You don't. I mean,
Non-
I didn't word that right.
Full size.
I mean, full size
yeah.
back seats.
Full size back seats. Non 2+2.
Yeah. Sorry, that was worded very badly. I'm sorry, but
there you go.
it's a really ambitious design. So talk me through your ideas for it.
Well, a lot of what is possible on the exterior and on the interior is only possible because of packaging. As I had mentioned previously, it's all about what's on the inside determines what's on the outside. So Christian has this very unique and brave way of packaging occupants in the car. So curving the spine a little bit more than normal and allowing the head therefore to sink in lower into the car. So there are ways you can optimize a seat that gain you headroom and gain you living space within the vehicle without bringing your roof up higher. So there was a lot of very good ergonomic design that went into the cabin.
You could look at this photo. I mean, I don't know if it's a rendering or a photo, but your ass in the front seat is like the lowest point of the car. It's really, really low.
It's not as extreme as like F1, but it's headed in that direction where I think your feet start coming. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Your feet start coming up, your ass drops, and you lean back a little bit more.
Feet. There's nothing too extreme here. So what is done is everything is tweaked by a little tiny bit, but then together it makes all the difference. You know what I mean? So it's not a car where you would sit and you're like, oh, I'm like an F1 driver. The feet are way up higher.
Right.
My H point is way. No. Everything is just a tiny bit modified, tweaked, and then overall you end up with a car that is kind of lower than a 911 but has more headroom than a Continental GT. So you are really like, it's weird because from the exterior you don't anticipate the amount of space that the interior actually has. You think, wow, it's a very tight, incredibly low slung, proper mid-engine hypercar, and then doors open and there's a kind of a Porsche Panamera like interior volume.
It's really cool.
It looks awesome. I mean, when I first saw this thing years ago when it debuted, I think it's one of the best looking cars I've ever seen.
Very
Absolutely.
happy to have been a part of that project. Yeah, very, very happy.
It's so cool.
And so it still has sort of the wraparound windshield. It's not quite as far as some of the two-door cars, but it's pretty far. It wraps pretty far back.
It does wrap very far back. I don't think we held off on the wraparound at all.
No?
It is incredibly wraparound. There's a little bit more vision. Both up angle and down angle are better than in the two-seat mid-engine cars, but it's the same plan shape, so same top view, same curvature on the windshield. It's very, very round.
Do they have like platforms the way that like other car companies do? Or is this a completely unique tub and everything versus their other cars?
So the word platform is anyway not something that is universally accepted to mean the same thing everywhere. What defines a platform is different from company to company. I mean, if you are taking everything into consideration, platform is not just a set of engineering drawings. It's also the supply chain, it's also the logistics, it's also the manufacturing industrialization process. Things like the width of your hallway can determine whether you are able to produce this particular part and get it to a spray booth or not.
Right.
So how far do you take the idea of platform? And of course, at Koenigsegg, like at every other company, there are synergies between products, and there are certain engineering solutions and design solutions that the company doesn't want to reinvent for every single car. But I would say, in comparison with some of the other companies I worked on, there's a lot of there's more freedom in each one of these cars to do unique bespoke solutions.
Yeah. Did you ever like just sit in a room with Christian and you're just like, how is this guy's brain doing this?
Yeah, that was my 3 years in Sweden.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, does he just like come into work every day and go, I have an idea, and you go, you're just completely out of your mind?
That's exactly what's going on. I mean, usually at like 4 o'clock in the morning, you get first set of text messages with ideas.
Yeah.
Then in the morning, there's a recap of what I sent you at night. What do you think of that? And
yeah.
In the evening, I still had another one.
Did you enjoy Anglholm?
I enjoyed it from the point of view of initial experience, but it does get tricky if you live there. You know, just because I'm more of a city person, and I think for us staying there also coincided with COVID times.
Oh, yeah, that could be tough.
So it was a little bit of a cabin fever type scenario where you feel it's comfortable, luxurious in many ways, but you're just in a small town in the middle of nowhere. And Sweden is kind of strange because you could just by land get to places, but you would have to do a long detour. So they take ferries to get to continental Europe, and then you just feel like you're on an island.
Yeah.
When COVID hit and ferries stopped running, then you're even more kind of
oh yeah,
I'm stuck here now.
Yeah.
So that was
yeah. As a place to visit, I liked Ängelholm a lot.
Sure.
I thought it was neat, but I totally understand.
Well, try living there. I mean, I don't know. Some people really like it. Like Christian is
sure.
a big fan, but
Yeah.
But I just I want the concert scene. I want to be able to go out and experience different bigger cities, Berlin, Los Angeles.
Sure.
Just every weekend you can do something that you didn't do the weekend before.
Yeah.
But in Ängelholm, you like nature, you go see nature, and
Yeah. It's also gets dark early in the winter
it
too.
gets dark,
Yeah.
it gets cold. So.
Did you get to drive a few of the Koenigsegg's?
Yeah.
They're pretty wild.
They're incredible.
Yeah.
By all means, I mean, even I don't like comparisons because every car has its own soul and its own unique character, but it's just amazing what a smaller company with a dedicated, talented, and motivated team can achieve without having the resources of a Goliath.
Yeah. Really interesting. And the CC850, which I saw at Quail last year,
Right.
and I talked to Christian about it for a few minutes. Pretty crazy car. So with that one, you sort of took the CC design and updated it for the future. It's got this synthetic manual gearbox,
That's crazy, yeah,
which is really wild. But talk me through the design of this. How did you make changes while keeping the original vibe of the CC cars?
Well, the original vibe sat next to me the whole entire time.
Is that orange one?
Literally looking over
No,
your
I'm
shoulder.
talking about Christian Koenigsegg.
Oh yeah,
himself.
Christian. Yes.
Christian
Yeah.
von Koenigsegg was never far, and it really had to pass his. He obviously. He loves the old cars, and we all do. I love the old cars, but he also has a very personal relationship with every little element on those old cars. There's a story to tell about every little thing. And it's really interesting when you're working on a new one and he comes and says, but you didn't notice this particular thing about the old one, but that meant a lot to me, and do you think we could still incorporate that? So there was a lot of back and forth between us, and I fully embraced it. There are moments when I feel with some clients that I work with that I should just be left alone. But this wasn't it. Like, this was really great. It was just awesome to have all the insight into what they did to create the original shape and to try to interpret that in a modern car.
What are some of those details?
So, for example, the very fine line that you walk between aggression, confidence, and actually friendliness, like he doesn't want the car to be overtly aggressive. He doesn't want the car to, like, I always say cars should look like they want to burn your village. And I don't mean I don't mean that they need to be like Mansory style over exaggerated
No, that
things.
looks like you want to burn the car. That's a different
story.
story.
It's a different burn, But they should have menace in them, in my mind. And Christian says, no, it should have the confidence. It's definitely there. It doesn't have a point to prove it's the fastest car in the world. Koenigseggs are the best, but it shouldn't necessarily want to burn your village. So there was a lot of back and forth on how overtly aggressive the facial expressions on the cars get, and also, for example, the sculpture on the car, the soft flowing volumes on the car that maybe if I was, let's say, the first shots that I worked on for this car were edgier, and he kept coming back saying, but really we should be more closer to the original in some of these sections and the door sections, but he really liked what we did. I remember him saying that the car looks so much more toned, and it just looks like it went to the gym and properly,
It's interesting because that car, it was such a product of late '90s and early 2000s design, the original one.
I would even say early mid '90s.
Yeah.
That's when they worked on it. Yeah.
I get 90s in general, and so to update that without making it like I see people who are like rendering shit on Instagram and whatever, and it's like, oh, new Testarossa, and it's basically like, you know, an SP3 with strakes on it, and it ends up looking like a much angrier version of the car. And this looks modern, but you're right, it's not particularly angry in its aesthetic.
Well, that's the result of the teamwork that I'm talking about.
It's a strange dichotomy of like the fact that like to drive that car is a very angry experience, but to look at it isn't, compared to, you know, a Zonda or something like that.
Right. But I mean, I guess in some way, aiming at the purity of a 911 is never a bad thing. You know, when you say, well, it doesn't have to do the screaming with its looks. It just it's on an emotional level that you get the. You know,
it's like a 22-year-old versus a 42-year-old.
Something like
there's
that.
Like a maturity, confidence.
Of
it
has like dad strength.
That's
like old man. It has old man strength. You know,
it's got James Bond confidence. Not to use something that's overplayed with Aston Martin, but just a person who can handle anything and just looks like a tough person, but isn't advertising it and shouting about it all the time.
It also has enough self confidence and just doesn't have to scream and shout anymore. Kind of knows what he's or she's capable of. One of the things that we really tried to improve is not the right word, modernize, is sculpture. The car has really nice flowing highlights on the body side, plenty of Coke bottle, more than the original ever had. Leaner volumes on the wheels. If you look over the front wheel, the amount of mass that the car has, it's much tighter to the wheels than the original was. So it's stanced really well. I mean, it's not stanced like a tuner car, obviously, but it, for a grown-up production car.
Zach, get a photo of the Koenigsegg CC8, the original. Let's just see a back-to-back. It's got much bigger wheels. I mean, I think the CC8 probably had 18s or something.
But to be fair, everything else is bigger too.
Yeah.
This cabin is bigger than the CC8 cabin, so it's in proportion. Everything
So there's a CC8S. Oh, you can see it there. Yeah, the CC8S, the silver one that's on the show stand there. That one.
Yeah, you see the front volume.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Yeah.
So we kind of have a leaner, tighter, and then the front three-quarter of the new car there, lower corner.
Yeah.
If you click on that, you see just how tight that front volume is.
Yeah. Oh man, and the original car was a good-looking car, but it's like it's yours to fuck up. So you got to be careful.
That's the thing. People always say like, yeah, but you guys are working on these extreme packages. It must be so easy, but it's also very easy to fuck it up. It's just so easy. You're like a millimeter away from screwing things up at every point in time.
Yeah. Very interesting. Now we were talking about how a lot of times packaging of stuff determines the overall shape. With electric cars, you, in theory, should have more freedom because batteries can be arranged more uniquely than motors or engines and stuff, and no prop shafts and things like that. Do you appreciate that kind of freedom, or do you like having a technical drawing to work over?
That's a good, interesting point. I think let's say for a minute, separating passenger cars, regular cars from sports cars, and speaking of regular cars, the packaging of those has been predominantly around an occupant for a very long time now. The actual drivetrain of those cars is 2-liter 4-cylinder most often, right? And that 2-liter 4-cylinder is kind of a size of it's negligible in packaging size. It's not defining the shape of the car at all. So when you remove that internal combustion engine from regular cars and you say there's batteries here now, the overall shape doesn't change that much. It's anyway always been packaged around safety of the occupant, around the crash lengths that the crash beams that the car needs, the getting in and out, ingress egress, like interior comfort. These things, I would say 95% of the car's shape is defined by that and not by the drivetrain.
Okay.
So switching to electric there offers some advantages. You can have a flat floor, but it won't radically change the shape of the car. Like I said, it's 90% around the human. On the hypercar side of things, on performance car, sports car side of things, engine is a much bigger lump. So that's placing it in the front or placing it in the middle of the car in the rear defines the shape of the vehicle completely, right? And also weight balance, right? So you have a heavy component, and placing it strategically in the car defines the vehicle characteristics to a large extent. So switching to batteries there, where you can more evenly distribute that weight around the car, means that there is potentially more freedom, but it's also very easy to lose character with that freedom, because front mid-engine cars had a very uniquely exaggerated character with their long hoods. Rear mid-engine cars had a very uniquely exaggerated character with their long spines. And now if you say, I can throw my batteries wherever I want in the car, and for center of gravity reasons low, but it's very easy to end up with cars that are not fish, not meat, and to lose that strong sense of character. And that is a little bit the worry. I think a lot of the companies are trying their best right now to come up with a recipe for an exciting electric sports car going forward. Well, we've seen some very impressive things on the market already, from Rimac, for example. And
I drove in Nevera. It's batshit.
It's insane, right?
It's batshit.
I haven't driven it, but
it's batshit. But at the same time, and I told this to Mate, and I told this to Miro, like, when you're not doing batshit things, it's shockingly normal. And for $2.5 million, I don't want fucking normal.
Right. So that's the challenge. You kind of nailed that. Yeah. So it's very difficult to still extract the same character, the same drama, the same kind of passion. At this point in time, there's a lot of recalibrating that customers and car fans have to do to get used to the idea that there is no more fire breathing.
It's interesting though that, I mean, if you look at the Nevera here, the shape is what I would call traditional hypercar. I'm sure, Sasha, you can maybe spot small differences, but it looks like you could fit a lump of an engine in the back if you wanted to, just looking at, wrong one. Like, if you go back and forth, just the way the canopy kind of tapers in the back and is still very high,
Yeah, you could. But
maybe they put stuff back there. I don't know.
I think the driver compartment is moved slightly rearward. The nose is a little longer than it otherwise would be, and the rear deck is a little bit shorter than it otherwise would be. And they do package some of the batteries where an engine would have gone.
Yeah.
It's floor plus that.
But it's not really the floor, because if you do the floor, you sit higher.
Yeah.
So it's actually not under the driver's seat.
It's like behind you, kind of.
Yeah.
It's like what they do with the Ferrari and stuff. Do you think, from a designer's perspective, like the markets, we kind of like what we like, and if something deviates too strongly, it's very dangerous. Like, we'll either love this new idea that's disruptive, or we're going to hate it because it looks way too weird. So is that a challenge with something like an electric hypercar or sports car, where you go, you have all the freedom for packaging, but if you go too far off, from the norm, like maybe it won't succeed?
I mean, one thing that comes to mind is, I think De Silva was the one of my bosses from VW times, amazing designer. He always said, don't make double step, make only one step. That meant don't go two steps ahead of where everybody thinks you should be. Because if you do two steps, it's very easy to lose. People don't get it, and then in hindsight, it was a great product, but nobody bought it and it bankrupted the company. Well, great.
Right.
So there's always that consideration as well, that you need to do something that lands well, that people are able to, because inevitably you are deeper in the subject than most of your customers will be, because you are losing sleep thinking about these things. So it's always easy to think that everybody's with you in the depths of your imagination, but they're not. They're just sitting at home and browsing their Instagram feed, and then this thing pops up and they think, what is that? Like, I don't care, I don't like it. So it's really important to sort of always have that naive first look, to be able to say, just palate cleanse, I don't know, eat a bunch of ginger and and look at it like you're seeing it for the first time, and understand as a normal car guy, as somebody who just likes cars, do I still like this, or have
Cybertruck?
Really like it.
You like it?
Fucking love it.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. What do you really like about it?
I really like the fact that it's designed back to first principles, that a lot of the design that we see in front of us right now in the regular car segment is just decoration. There's nothing, like when you see a car, come up to it, point your finger at any bit of it and say, what is this and for which purpose? And I'll tell you, 8 out of 10 times you'll say, there is no purpose, it's here, and without this thing, the car would be just as good, it would drive just as well. It's just here because it looks cool, or designer thought it was fancy, or competitors have something similar, and this company also felt like they needed to put that on there. It's like removing a headphone jack from an iPhone, but still keeping a chrome ring on it.
Right.
Apple would never do that. If the headphone jack is out, the chrome ring is out with it. It doesn't stay, but cars don't have exhaust pipes, yet they still have plastic exhaust pipes.
Those are dumb. I agree.
So
those are dumb.
Or like intakes in the front that are covered up.
Intakes in the front that are covered up.
Yeah.
Air outlets that don't let any air out. The curves on the body side. I mean, what are the purpose of those curves? What are they actually doing? So for me, Cybertruck is a really incredibly powerful, some may say offensive, but statement against this fashionization. It's a car that is made out of steel. It's a car that will I think define a generation going forward. There's going to be a lot of influence of that car. It's a piece of architecture on the road. I cannot say that I find it beautiful, but I think that it's a philosophical statement on the scale of a black square. You know, it's just a very cool thing to have pulled off.
It's interesting. I think it's fucking heinous looking, but that's fine. I don't need to buy one. I also don't think it does most of the things that they say it's going to do. No, it's not exoskeleton. It's not bulletproof. It's not going to fucking float. It's not going to do any of that shit.
Well, you can't even throw a what is it? What are they throwing at it?
You couldn't throw the little ball at it without smashing the window.
But you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
like
no.
I mean, it's the removal of superfluous design.
Just clutter, noise, eye cancer. There's many ways to put it.
Yeah.
Stuff. Well, you look at cars and you're just like, what is this? For what purpose? Like cladding on cars. Does it do any job of protecting these cars from damage, from city use? No, it's just arbitrarily thrown onto the car because it looks cool.
I think it looks terrible. I hate it. You know, you go from like a nicely painted fender or body line or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's just flat plastic, and that's my opinion.
I think it just is an intentional base model that offers an opportunity to sell someone a painted fender for more money later.
Could be. There's also that built into the projects, where you need to kind of ration it out. And,
yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's like wearing fashion boots, like boots that have, aggressive mud tread, but they're just fashion shoes. Like they're not meant for walking in. Right. So it's this look of ruggedness and durability and outdoorsiness, like the cladding, but it's on a car that is not actually doing that or never used for that.
Or it's the kind of sole pattern that you would associate with these shoes, but it's applied onto a shoulder. And you wonder, like, why would it be on a shoulder? Like, what actually is the point? Am I going to climb a mountain with my shoulder?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit the question that I have when I see modern cars, is how much of it is genuine? How much of it is... because why can't it just be that the form follows function? How stupidly simple is that idea, and why can't it just be that?
Are we in a tough spot now because of CFD and miles per gallon? So if so many of the cars would have the same size, the same hard points, and the same function, the same goals, they'd all look the same.
Do you ever see that? But
that's not a bad thing, is it?
I forget what... Well, it is if you're trying to sell someone a different car.
Not necessarily.
No, but we have... I feel like we get so much of our...
Look, how many
of
us are wearing the same, like Levi's pants and I don't know, simple Converse shoes and
sure,
hoodie. I don't necessarily need to look like Freddie Mercury filming It's a Hard Life video.
True, but you're wearing a DC sweatshirt and DC shoes.
Am I?
You are. Yeah. Now, do you like DC? Or were you a skateboarder? Like, what is it about that company?
So as a kid, I did a little bit of skateboarding. That wasn't at all meaningful, but it was a gateway to thinking that I can wear skateboardy shit and feel comfortable in it.
Same thing.
And then when Ken Block was part of DC Story, that felt to me like a cool thing. And then a few metal bands that I like were wearing DCs at one of their concerts, and I thought that was a pretty cool shoe, and figured like, well, I can kind of try it on for size.
So I think like a piece of your identity and your personality is connected to skate culture and DC shoes, right? So I think cars for decades, going back, 80 years, people have purchased cars because they went, I like the way that looks and what it says about me and how it makes me feel. Yeah. So if they all look the same, we'd lose that, and that would be really tough.
That's the whole point, though. If we're talking about business opportunities, I think there's a major business opportunity for someone who says, I'll just make a car that is not full of this personality crap. I'll just make a car that is just a car. Super perfect, perfectly stanced, perfectly proportioned, no gimmicks, no nonsense.
So you mean like a genuine shape, but nothing tacked on.
The same way that Golf Mark IV for me was a perfect shape, the same way that the Mark I Golf was a perfect shape. Where things are the way they are, and you can kind of point your finger blindly at any part of the car and say, what is this for? And there's a reason what it's there for.
Sure. I think there are a few cars that do that. Mark IV Golf is a good example. Maybe not the R32.
Well, why not? That's a cool one.
It is a cool one, but there is nothing fussy about it. Yeah. And there's got to be a few cars on the market today that have that. Actually, I'll credit Tesla. The Model 3, I think, probably has that. It doesn't have a lot of superfluous design shit on it.
It doesn't. You're right. It's close to the idea that I'm talking about right now. It's just the styling of that car. To me, it doesn't speak as well as a Golf does. Like, I like things that are more Bauhaus, more kind of product design, industrial design, and less swoopy in general. And that thing, just in my mind, still feels a bit swoopy.
911. Or Cayman, Porsche Cayman or Boxster.
Well,
I think those are
definitely on that.
Yeah, they're right up there. I mean, they don't have a lot of, at least especially the lower trims. They don't have a lot of extra shit on there.
And that is really a car where you can still kind of inside and out point a finger at anything, and there's a reason why it's there.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other cars.
Sure, especially if you are making the mid-size sedan. And your A to your C pillar is like the same no matter what brand you are, and it's really just a front fascia and a rear fascia that identifies this as being your car. There's a lot of Zach's got some charts up, and there's a lot of the similar things, especially compact crossovers from Subaru to RAV4 to Acura to whatever, they're all very, very close, except for the front and the rear fascias.
When I'm on the market for a car, I really try to look for something that has as little design as possible. Like, I don't know, it's hard. They're very hard. It's very, very hard to find these days. But
you drove up in a Defender.
I drove
a new Defender,
yeah.
Which is a pretty good example of what you're talking about.
I would have loved to take more stuff out, but it is what's on the market. You know? But
those things that cover the rear windows bug me.
I like the two-door Defender with the Steelies on it. My friend's got one of those. That's cool.
And a V8.
This one isn't, but I've seen those with the V8s, and they're pretty rowdy as well.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, neat. Zach, do we have anything on the Patreon? If you want to ask questions of our guests, watch the live stream, get an ad-free experience, and get the show early, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast. Plans starting at just $3 a month. Lucas says, how hard is it for, a designer to, we kind of touched on this before, but how hard is it for a designer to compromise on their own taste to accommodate manufacturers' ideas and needs? Can a designer say, no, I won't do that, it's ugly? Imagine your design won't be picked if you do that, but...
So that's an interesting question, because obviously we're not just, as designers, we're not just doing things simply on a whim. It's not like, I just like this and that's why I'm going to do it. No, I think this makes sense for the brand. This makes sense for the evolution of the design kind of trends in the industry. I have usually a story to tell with a design, right? It isn't just, I felt like it and that's what it looks like. So, and every designer that offers their vision for a project comes in not just with a set of sketches, but comes with some kind of background to explain what it is that they did and for what reason. And when you get picked and you get to see your car through to production, there's still plenty of alignments that have to happen, with marketing department, with management of the company, sometimes with the founder and the CEO, you name it. And each one of those alignments, there's a conversation to be had. But if you have gained trust and reputation within the company for someone who is reasonable, they hear you out. and then they argue with you or they accept your point of view. But it is teamwork. You're not. There isn't this. It's not like Rage Against the Machine. You say, "Fuck you! I won't do what you tell me." And you, some people do, but they don't.
You're not
going to
last very long.
I guess I've been pretty strong about not compromising on some of the things in the projects where I had a more leading role, and that hasn't always gone down well. But then, like as time passes, even those people still come back and say, "Well, actually, that wasn't such a bad thing that you did fight for this." For example, having wheels from the Veyron with these, in my mind, terrible Pax tires that Michelin did.
Oh yeah.
The run flats that were super high sidewalls. In fact, the front wheel's sidewall was taller than the rear wheel's sidewall. That actually meant that no matter when you look at where you look at the car, it always looks like it has nose up configuration because the front tire makes the rim sit slightly higher off the ground than the rear tire.
Yeah.
And that was something I personally
There's a good photo right there, the black one on the second row on the left. You can see it always looks a little higher.
You see that? It's just it's kind of poking up with its nose. And this was one thing that I remember fighting like crazy about, is to move away from these Pax tires. And there was a lot of engineers who were saying that was not a good thing and we should stick to these safety tires because the car's doing crazy speeds. But so you fight for what you believe, but if you have a good story and if you explain, I made a few attempts at explaining why the Veyron maybe doesn't sit as well on the wheels as it could because of that front tire, and in the end you get it through.
They were also $30,000 a set or something.
They were ridiculous.
Yeah, the Chiron has expensive tires, but you don't have to send the wheels to France to have them installed. Yeah, that was one worth arguing over for sure. All right.
Well, but what I'm trying to say is that you're not being unreasonable. You're trying to find arguments, explain your point of view, and ultimately, when you've exhausted every other option, you kind of have to deal with what you have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Clinton says, I'm in a tiny outcast camp that thinks carbon fiber doesn't look good on everything. I feel like in a full-blown prototype, meaning race car, it works. In a road car with different materials, it doesn't flow well and might even look cheap. Am I wrong?
No, I think absolutely not wrong. First of all, carbon fiber visually, I find, has kind of exhausted itself a little bit at this point in time. It was a novelty. It was something that people really liked to show off on their cars. But right now, when everything is carbon fiber, there's not really a unique selling point in having carbon. As much work as companies put into aligning the weave between panels and making sure that it's seamless, there's still very patchy way that reflections and sunlight reflects on carbon fiber, so you never get a good read of the entire flow of the highlights on the car. You always get really loud, aggressive reflections in some areas and then muted in the other areas, so the car ends up being kind of patchy in the way it looks. So I think that if I were to spec a high-end hypercar, I would definitely just have it painted. There's no reason for carbon fiber to be exposed. When it comes to factual use of carbon fiber, it is still lighter, stronger.
Sure, I think he's talking about as an aesthetic, not as a. I like when they use it as a negative space, like a halo, like when they. Rather than having like the model of the car as a badge where it's painted but it's haloed so you can see the carbon as a detail. I think that's nice.
That's cool. That's trick.
That's cool.
Sure.
Yeah, but you could definitely overdo it. Prashant says, is there any merit to the Coupe crossovers? I thought they were ugly at first, but the X6M is kind of growing on me. I am anti-Coupe crossover.
I'm also not excited about Coupe crossovers. I would say it's a project that pops up very often when you work in car companies, and it's not a project that anybody's really excited about. It's not the one that people are going to be like, oh my God, I can't wait for that, Coupe crossover to come my way. And
no one's final project at Art Center is a Coupe crossover.
I think some people may be doing that just because they're hoping that car companies will hire them. But then you think, well, if you're that kind of desperate and you're still a student, come on, have a dream.
This is your last moment to have a dream before you go get a job.
That's where dreams go to die. That's hilarious. Levi says, have you ever been involved in pitching a whole car? He says, I think a truly affordable compact rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive platform would be a great seller. History says otherwise, my friend. My pitch would be to bring back AMC with Gremlin and Eagle as a shared model. You're dreaming, Levi.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Have you ever been involved in pitching a whole car?
Well, I would say the closest to that experience is the time at Koenigsegg, where we were routinely brainstorming on not just the design of the car, but the entire concept of the vehicle. Where, hey, Christian, should we do something like this? That's a pretty good idea. Let's discuss, come over after work. We can sit down and have a chat on this. So there was always, the doors are open to discuss the entire car.
It was never so just great to see what Koenigsegg could come up with if they were trying to sell a $60,000 sports car.
Yeah.
I realized.
Coupe crossover.
Yeah.
But somehow he would make it great.
Those are sports cars, though, right?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Michael Cosgrove says, can you find anything positive from a design perspective on the new BMW M3 and M4 grille?
Short answer.
Yeah, no, it's not great. Red Rover says, what are the differences in design in a front engine versus a mid-rear engine car in regards to pedestrian safety?
That's very particular.
That is a very particular
question. That's very interesting. I mean, so the differences in design between front mid-engine and rear mid-engine is obviously the placement of the engine, and that changes everything about the car. Usually cars' cabin is set up with a so-called 4-degree down angle, 4-degree vision angle that comes out of your eye and reaches to the road. And if the engine is in the front and you sit further away from the road, you also need to sit slightly higher to be able to see
over the engine.
So that sets up the fact that, or defines the fact that front mid-engine cars are by definition a bit taller than rear mid-engine cars because of that 4-degree vision line.
Right.
So on the exotic scale, that's why modern mid-engine cars are more exotic, is because they are lower, squatter. They look more extreme. They look more like spaceships on the road. Whereas a front mid-engine car always has its cabin poking out slightly taller than you would want in a way. Older cars, before 4-degree vision lines were, homologation necessity, you could do a lot more with those, and that's why you had very extreme front mid-engine cars that are just not quite doable anymore.
Right. Sure.
Pedestrian safety. Actually, a good point. When you have a big lump of an engine in front, that means head impact areas for the pedestrian are going over the engine, and that means you need a certain amount of clearance. Active hood that pops open when there's an impact, or air clearance to the engine. That means the hood goes even higher, and that means the 4-degree vision line goes even higher, and that means the car gets even uglier.
It just compounds.
Yeah. Rear mid-engine car does not have an engine in the front, so you could easier sort of swallow the pedestrian impact requirements because there's no engine to clear, basically. Are
you worried about windshields at that point?
I don't know whether windshield is part of the head impact zone. Usually it's the problematic areas are hood shut lines. The parting lines between hood and front fender, because front fender is because the sheet metal of the hood sort of wraps around and creates a very strong ridge along the whole length of that fender shut line, hood shut line. And that's where potential head impact is actually problematic, because as opposed to the other areas on the hood that deflect under impact, that thing stays put.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't thought about that. Last one. Tim says, I've heard anecdotally that the hardest part of design is knowing when you're done. Is there any truth to that?
I think for a vast majority of people, that is the truth, Yeah, they just don't know when to stop. Both companies and individuals. But I think a really good way to know when to stop is having budget constraints.
When the money runs out,
they will tell you when to stop.
When you reach into your pocket and you feel like there's nothing there, then you kind of have to stop.
That's hilarious. That's excellent. Well, a great show, Sasha. Thank you for coming. That's the same thing in radio. When you know when to start and know when to stop. Follow Sasha on Instagram. It is Sasha Selipanov. Sasha Selipanov on the gram. He posts all kinds of cool shit. And now hopefully going to be a Los Angeles local for at least some time.
Yeah.
So we'll see you at the Cars and Coffees and all those up in the canyons, all that good stuff. And thanks to all our patrons for asking such good questions. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.